The petrol station was quiet, too early for traffic, just a standard drop. 2 guards, a few metal boxes, and a job they'd done 100 times before. One of them moved to close the gate behind him. But he wasn't alone. A woman watched from the edge of the forecourt. Calm, phone in hand. She wasn't staff, she wasn't shopping. And she didn't flinch when 3 masked figures appeared at the gate. What happened next would leave one man permanently scarred and the lead detectives into a network of early morning raids, hidden lookout roles, and a group that didn't just steal. They watched and waited. When they moved, it was fast, violent, and far from their first. This is the story of a Midlands robbery gang and how months of violence unraveled in a single brutal morning. They didn't live like gangsters. No gold chains, no flashy cars. But behind closed doors, they were structuring something violent and very deliberate. Ashley Bell, 33, was no stranger to organised crime. By the time this string of robberies began, he already had a conviction for violent assault. In 2011, he was involved in a stabbing outside a Coventry nightclub. Witnesses saw fists fly, then a knife flash. One victim was stabbed in the stomach, back and elbow. Bell wasn't the one holding the blade, but he was there, part of it, and he served time for it. Years later, in 2013, he was caught again, this time for a burglary at a family home in Solihull. The residents were out. Bell forced a lock, smashed a patio window, and took jewellery worth thousands. He was caught by hidden CCTV and sentenced to almost 5 years. Marcus Cohen, 39, had a record just as long, and arguably more audacious. In 2013, he joined 4 others to raid a jeweller's in Wiltshire. They burst in, masked and armed, smashing displays and fleeing with over £300,000 in stolen jewellery. Their getaway car, a Citroën Picasso, was later found crashed and burning. Cohen didn't get far. He was arrested hiding in woods near the hospital where the gang's escape ended. For that, he served 4 years and 8 months. By 2018, both men were out and building something new. They didn't act alone. They brought in Thomas Bruce, 29, a Coventry local with no public record of violence before this. But in their first raid, he stood watch over terrified staff, cable ties in hand. Connor Sanderson, just 21, would later join them, already spiralling from burglary to heroin possession with intent to supply. Charlene Shaw, Cohen's partner, played her own part. She had no criminal record. But that was about to change. This wasn't a crew of amateurs. It was a network, carefully picked, quietly rehearsed, and ready to move. It was just after 6 a.m. in Stretton, Derbyshire. The shutters of the Co-op store were halfway open. Staff had only just arrived, unlocking doors, switching on lights, preparing for the quiet morning trade. Then came the gang. 4 men in masks burst through the entrance. No shouting, no hesitation. One held a crowbar. Another had an axe. They split up, one heading straight for the manager, the others corralling staff into a corner. They brought cable ties. Staff were bound and threats were made. Anyone who moved was told to stay down. Among them was Thomas Bruce, the man police believe was drafted in specifically for this job. While Bell and Cohen took the manager to a back office to open the safe, Bruce stood guard. One female employee, overwhelmed by panic, began to hyperventilate. Bruce didn't tie her up. He handed her a drink of water. It was the only moment of restraint that morning. From the safe, they took £13,000 in cash, plus lottery scratch cards and stamps. No fingerprints left behind, no CCTV system taken, not yet. They were in and out quickly, before any alarm was triggered. The night before, they had met at the Britannia Hotel in Coventry, just 30 miles away. That detail came later, during the investigation, when phone records placed them together. For now, they disappeared. For Bell and Cohen, this was more than a robbery. It was a test run, a proven method. It wouldn't be long before they used the same plan again. Only next time, it would be worse. Chalesmore, Coventry, March 6th, 2018. The Texaco garage sat on Black Prince Avenue, just another stop for the cash-in-transit crew that morning. 2 guards arrived early, each carrying out metal boxes to refill the ATM. It was still quiet. No customers, no movement, except for a woman strolling casually across the forecourt. Inside the store, one guard reached the back room. As he moved to shut the gate behind him, the ambush began. 3 masked men forced their way through. No warning, no words wasted. The footage, later released by West Midlands police, showed everything. The guard was shoved into the office where they screamed at him to open the safe. When he hesitated, one of them brought the axe down, striking him across the face. His cheekbone was fractured. Blood covered the floor. He didn't fight back. He couldn't. At the same time, the second guard entered with the final box. He was hit too, the axe landing against his helmet. They vanished with £75,000. It was cold, precise, and executed with a level of control that made one thing clear: this was never going to be their last. The guard who took the blow never returned to work. His injury healed, the trauma didn't. This wasn't just a robbery, it was targeted, timed, and utterly ruthless. And it wasn't over. The gang already had their next location in mind. She didn't storm the building, she didn't raise a weapon, she never even stepped inside. But Charlene Shaw played her part, and it was one the gang depended on. The footage of Petrol Station Hit shows her walking slowly across the Texaco forecourt in Chalesmore. It's early morning. She's calm and deliberate, pink slippers on her feet. On the surface, nothing suspicious. But what she was doing was more calculated than it looked. She was the lookout. Shaw had arrived before the robbery began. She stayed outside, tracking the movements of the security guards as they unloaded the cash boxes. Her job was to confirm when the final box had entered the rear room. That was the signal. Once the timing was right, she passed the word. And then it started. As the masked men moved in, Shaw held her position. She didn't flee, she didn't hide, she watched. The entire robbery, including the violent assault on the guard inside, happened just meters away. But Shaw wasn't finished. After the attackers fled, she approached the wounded guard. Her tone was soft, her face unreadable. She offered help, asked what had happened, listened closely. She wasn't trying to assist, she was trying to gather information. Everything she heard would later be relayed back, not to the police, but to Marcus Cohen, her boyfriend, and one of the gang's leaders. Her job wasn't just about timing, it was about control. Controlling what the gang knew and what they could prepare for next. To anyone watching the footage without context, she might have seemed like a bystander, concerned, curious, just in the wrong place. But every movement was rehearsed. Every second she lingered served a purpose. Shaw wasn't in the gang's inner circle by accident. She was there because they trusted her to see what they couldn't. Just before 6 a.m. on May 10, 2018, the co-op in Shepshed, Leicestershire was barely open. Staff were inside, beginning their shift. Doors unlocked, lights on. Another quiet morning, until the gang arrived. A small team forced their way in, masked and armed with crowbars. The gang operated in rotation, but this time it was Ashley Bell and 2 unidentified accomplices seen entering the building. Marcus Cohen, although heavily involved in earlier raids, remained behind. Surveillance suggested he helped scout the store the night before, but stayed in Hinckley during the hit. The approach was swift. No shouted threats, no unnecessary delay. The attackers moved fast, heading straight for the tills and stock drawers. Behind the shop front, staff acted quickly. They locked themselves in a back office and triggered the alarm. It worked. The gang didn't break through. Still, they didn't leave empty-handed. They fled with a small haul, around £2,000 in cash, stamps, and the store's CCTV hard drive. It wasn't the value that mattered. It was the consistency. Another early morning target, another business hit before sunrise. One member of staff, who'd worked there for over 22 years, asked for a transfer shortly after. She never wanted to face that doorway again. The job was less violent than Texaco, but no less invasive. Police later connected this raid to the same pattern: early timing, forced entry, and a deliberate grab for surveillance systems. This wasn't chaos, it was strategy. 6 names would ultimately be linked to the wider conspiracy, some organizing, others executing. In Shepshed, 3 went in, but the full weight of the gang was behind them. This was the final strike in a tightly controlled campaign, just the final withdrawal, before it all came crashing down. It didn't end with a single tip-off. There was no dramatic standoff, no last job gone wrong. The gang fell because detectives watched, listened, and collected information. After the Shepshed raid, the Regional Organised Crime Unit, or OCU, picked up patterns too sharp to ignore. Identical timings, similar entry methods, the same kind of targets. What began as individual offences soon looked like chapters from the same plan. Detectives started with surveillance footage. They reviewed hours of CCTV from all 3 crime scenes. It wasn't just the robberies, it was the days before. Footage showed suspects returning to the locations, casing the stores, noting timings, observing deliveries. Then came the phones. Bell had used a Ford Puma and a Mini, both fitted with false plates, to carry out surveillance in the lead-up to the Texaco robbery. Police tracked those vehicles and traced communications between gang members. One of the most telling pieces of evidence came from text messages. Casual, coded, but damning. They discussed stolen cigarettes, job timings, and split details that matched the stolen hauls almost exactly. There was also video, footage of several gang members wearing the exact same clothing later seen during the raids. Once suspects were identified, arrests followed. Bell, Cohen, and Sanderson were taken in after a separate burglary brought them to police attention. In custody, detectives questioned them again, this time with 3 robberies worth of evidence laid out on the table. Bruce and Shaw were arrested separately. Shaw's role as the lookout became undeniable once footage was paired with phone records. The gang's downfall wasn't built on a single mistake. It was built on consistency. Same tools, same timing, same strategy. Every raid had left a trace. And when police were sure, when the whole picture came together, they moved, quietly, with precision, just like the gang had. The courtroom was packed, not with press or drama, but with weight. Statements from traumatized victims, CCTV stills, forensics. What unfolded at Warwick Crown Court wasn't just a robbery trial, it was the unravelling of a network. 5 people were in the dock, each with a role, each tied to a specific act. But prosecutors weren't just interested in who swung the axe. They wanted to prove the conspiracy, the planning, the positioning, the coordination. Ashley Bell and Marcus Cohen were painted as the central architects. The judge described their actions as professional and deliberate. Bell had been caught on surveillance before Texaco, driving scouted routes in cars with fake plates. Cohen had communicated with multiple members throughout the planning stages and had prior convictions that showed a clear pattern. Charlene Shaw, it was argued, didn't act out of panic or confusion. The court agreed. She was found guilty of conspiracy to rob. Connor Sanderson, just 21, had a record that already included burglary and drug supply. In court, his defense claimed he hadn't been present at both co-op jobs, but conceded his involvement at Texaco. He entered a guilty plea. Thomas Bruce stood accused for the Stretton job. The judge noted one moment of restraint, bringing water to a panicked worker, but said it didn't change the facts of his participation. The prosecution's case was clear. This wasn't 6 individuals committing scattered acts. It was one coordinated conspiracy designed to minimize risk and maximize profit, no matter the cost to the people caught in their path. And that cost was now laid bare. Victims who'd left jobs, homes burgled, faces broken, lives altered. The gang hadn't just taken cash, they'd left damage that couldn't be counted. The judge didn't hesitate. Each defendant was sentenced not just for what they'd done, but for how they did it, with precision, planning, and complete disregard for the people in their way. Ashley Bell, 33, received the longest sentence, 22 years, with an extended license period added. The court deemed him a dangerous offender. His record stretched back years, including robbery, handling stolen goods, and previous convictions for serious violence. He had been instrumental in planning the Texaco hit and was present during the most brutal parts of the operation. Marcus Cohen, 39, followed closely behind with 21 years. He was also declared a dangerous offender. Already on license for a £300,000 jewellery robbery, he was found to have helped orchestrate multiple jobs in this case, including surveillance and communication with other members. His connection to Charlene Shaw made the Texaco raid possible. Connor Sanderson, 21, received 14 years. His role at Texaco was clear, and police linked him to both a burglary and possession with intent to supply heroin. At sentencing, the court acknowledged his age, but not as mitigation. His crimes were too serious, too committed. Thomas Bruce, 29, was sentenced to 14 years, with at least 2/3 to be served in custody. The judge noted his minor act of compassion, but it didn't outweigh his involvement. Charlene Shaw, 39, received 5 years. No previous convictions, no history of violence. The judge said hers was a trusted position, and that she knew full well what she was enabling. Scott Bowman, 29, was the only one who didn't face sentencing. He remained wanted by police. Altogether, the gang received nearly 60 years in prison. Each sentence matched not just the crime, but the level of planning behind it. This wasn't a spree, it was structured, and it had come undone. What do you make of the sentences? Did justice match the brutality of what this gang inflicted, or should some have faced even more time? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and if you want more real UK crime stories like this, calmly told, fact first, and with nothing made up, subscribe, turn on notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. There's always another case waiting.